What 2020 lacked in racing, it made up for in new bikes out there and some new bike tech, which is also really, really cool and something I'm looking forward to see. We were lucky enough to be able to grab a few riders to get them to show us through their new bikes and explain a little bit more about them. So let's dive right in. It seems like only a year ago that NUKEPROOF were making revisions to their Old Faithful Mega frame, but a year on and there's a completely new version out there, and this time one that's most noticeable feature almost is that it can take a water bottle finally, something that's been remarked on by many people out there. Now sadly we've not seen three-time world champ Sam Hill pilot this thing to any victories this year, but don't worry, Elliott Heap, team member also, has been taken it basically to some top 10s and top 20s at the EWS that we did have this year, proving that it is a more than capable bike. But let's take a little closer look at it, shall we? If you're wondering a little bit more, the new Mega still comes in a 29 and 27.5 version, with the 27.5 having 165mm travel out back, whilst the 29er has 160mm out back, and both driven by a horse-link suspension design. On Elliott's race bike this year, he chose to run the new RockShox ZEB fork up front, giving him the most suspension and sort of stiffness in the chassis of that suspension fork to tackle, well, the gnarliest terrain that the EWS can throw at them. Of course, the team as well, sponsored by Mavic, so D-Max wheels were an obvious choice there. Again, the burliest wheels that you can ask for. Wrapped around those D-Max wheels was Michelin tyres and a super tacky compound 2.5 to just give them most grip and puncture protection. A lot of these riders really value puncture protection above all else, so they'll often choose for the burliest downhill tyres. As far as shifting goes, well, it was a full SRAM affair with access, drivetrain, wireless of course, and the access dropper as well, all coming into play. Reliability, no cables, easy to look after. It's definitely something that a lot of the pros are swaying towards. As far as braking goes, that's SRAM as well. Some big old 200mm rotors for that maximum stopping power. Remember, these guys are racing stages that can be over 20 minutes long, so avoiding things like brake fade and arm pump is going to be paramount. Moving on to the bikes of the LAPIERRE ZIPP collective team. Now these guys and girls, they were running the LAPIERRE Spicy team. Now not a brand new bike, but under the legs of Adrian Daly and Isabeau Courdurier, these bikes collected wins in both categories. So let's take a little closer look at the riders before we look into their bike details, shall we? First up, Adrian Daly then, 65 kilos, 172 centimeters tall, and rides a size large bike. The bike is actually a mullet as well, so that mixed wheel size. Suspension-wise, he'll switch between a RockShox ZEB and a RockShox Lyric Ultimate, with a RockShox Super Deluxe rear shock out back. Now, wheels are obviously from ZIPP and tyres again from Michelin, the French fancies. Isabeau, on the other hand, well, she's a little bit smaller. She is 154 centimeters tall, 52 kilos, and chooses to ride a size small frame, again in a mullet design, so that mixed wheel, the smaller 27.5 up back with a 29 up front. So as I said, Isabeau loves that 38mm new ZEB fork, again for its stiffness, and the new Charger 2 damper in it is amazing feeling, can be really well tuned. Group set is a full access setup again with the dropper and full XO1 gearing as well. ZIPP Moto wheels, they take care of taking all those big impacts, and Hutchinson tyres, again in a nice wide size 2.5s, really absorb all those big bumps and keep us stuck to the ground nicely as well. As I said then, the Spicy team is not a new bike for the year, but given that it's got wins in both classes, it's certainly worth something to shout about. It's again a horse-driven suspension design, but the unusual thing here is that the shock doesn't connect to the front triangle, but it's connected actually from the rocker link on top the chainstays at the bottom there. So something slightly different thrown at it that way to give a different leverage path and leverage ratio, if you like. Jessie Melamed, the Canadian course crusher. Now, long-time Rocky Mountain rider, and this year aboard their altitude. Jessie stands at 170 centimeters tall and about 68 kilograms on a good day, should we say. The winner of both Zermatt and Finale, he really did have quite an incredible standout year racing EWS this year, and what we're calling the unofficial overall champ. Now the new bike is a 29er all-round with 170mm travel up front and 160 out back. But let's take a little closer look at Jesse's bike, shall we? With such a standout year comes a standout bike, and this new altitude is certainly that. At 170 tall, he'll ride a medium frame. Now this frame is sort of customizable. It's got what Rocky Mountain call their Ride 9 system, which can change the geometry. So bottom bracket height, head angle can all be adjusted with this. Not only can the geometry be adjusted, but also the suspension as well. Via using this Ride 9 system, it has 9 different positions, really giving you the ability to custom tune it exactly how you want it. And if that wasn't enough, there's also a chip at the chainstays where you can really fine tune things as well. The suspension, again, another horse link design, meaning that the rear pivot is on the chainstays at the back. His altitude runs on Raceface's 29 turbine wheels, aluminium, safety first. If you ding an aluminium wheel, you can often bend it back and get away with it through the race. For carbon wheel cracks, often game over. And of course, Jesse is a fully sponsored Fox and Shimano athlete, so you can expect the full works when it comes to this. Fox-wise, it's a 38 up front with the Kashima coating and matching rear shock out back. And of course, that transfer post, again, Kashima coated. 150mm drop to get it slammed nice and low out the way. Jesse's been a long time Shimano athlete and actually helped develop the new XTR, so no surprise that you can find it throughout. Now, obviously gearing is all done via XTR, and he doesn't need the big 1051 that a lot of us push around these days, but actually opts for the 1045 tooth cassette out back. He's got some fair old legs in him, so I'm sure he can push those gears, no problem. XTR brakes, of course, XTR cranks as well. Rental push on grips, Raceface cockpit, WTB saddle and mallet E pedals, so really going for those nice contact points there. The new DEVINCI Troy. She's a looker, and Greg Callaghan popped up on this bike for this year 2020. Now, some would say that the Troy is more of a trail bike rather than a full-blown enduro bike, but I disagree. Running on full 29-inch wheels all the way around and 140mm out back, but with 160mm up front on the old Fox fork, it is a more than capable bike, and one that, well, when I saw Greg at Andy Specifico, was certainly very capable on it. Using Dave Weagle's split pivot design, it's similar to a horse link, but not quite. The linkage is driven via a single pivot around the rear axle, so just ever so slightly different. When it comes to number crunching, this thing is not too far off a fully fledged enduro bike. With a generous reach and 65-degree head angle, you can bet it's still very stable at high speeds. Now, as with most teams, when they run Fox suspension, it's also paired up to Shimano gearing, and things are very much like that here. Greg and the rest of the Junior DEVINCI team are running that full Fox throughout, front and rear suspension for them both. As I said, Shimano everywhere, gearing, cranks and 4-pot brakes, of course. And a lot of running gear is actually from Raceface, so Raceface wheels, Raceface cockpit. Last up, Maxxis tyres provide the grip, switching between Asagai's, high roller 2s, depending on what the course requires and needs, obviously usually in a downhill casing as well. Now, will we see the team racing the Troy for the 2021 season, or will they revert back to the more enduro bike from DEVINCI, the Spartan? Nobody knows, but either way, Greg's going to be flying on it, no doubt. Florian Nicolai was a rider who had a very successful 2019 season, battling right down to the wire with Sam Hill for the overall of the EWS, and unfortunately just missing out, but still a hell of a successful year. For 2020, he was on a brand new team, Trek Factory Enduro Racing, and with that brand new team came a brand new bike for him. That, of course, was the Trek Slash. Completely redesigned for 2020, the Trek Slash runs on 29-inch wheels like most other bikes in this vid, but interestingly enough, all new suspension design and frame design as well. You can find a RockShox Zeb up front with 170mm of travel, and out back was 160mm of travel, but this time it had a RockShox Super Deluxe through shaft, which is Trek's proprietary design and unique only to them, delivering all that buttery smooth goodness. Flying Flow rides a size large frame, which is what I would have expected at 183 centimeters tall. And of course it was SRAM throughout with the Access wireless group set, carbon cranks and dropper post as well, taking hold of duties of shifting and getting that seat dropped nice and low out of the way. As with a lot of Trek bikes, their in-house brand Bontrager were providing a lot of the things like cockpit, bar, stem, wheels and tyres as well. The Trek Slash uses Trek's ABP suspension design, which uses a pivot around the rear axle as opposed to on top of the chainstays. It's also got a floating suspension design, so whereby the suspension pivots at the top and the bottom, if you like. This wasn't the case for the new Slash, as it's fixed to the frame at the bottom of the shock. One of the most noticeable changes though for the Trek Slash frame for this year was that they followed in pursuit of guys like Specialized and have managed to incorporate in-frame storage. So underneath where the bottle cage is, that now unclips and comes off, and you've got some in-frame storage in there. You can fit bars, multi-tools, a little raincoat, God knows what else. It's a really useful thing, and I think it's something that we're going to see popping up more often. You just pop the plastic lid with the bottle cage back on, clip it in place, and there you go. You don't need any of that stuff strapped to your bike or anything like that anymore. So something that's really clever, and I'm sure, like I said, we'll see cotton on a lot more. That's it from me though for Bikes of Enduro from 2020. Some really interesting tech and designs in there, and great to see some new bikes being pushed regards to what's going on in the world and with a shortened race season. So who knows what 2021 is going to bring. But thank you very much for watching. If you want to see more GMBN, well then don't forget, click the old subscribe button below, give us the thumbs up, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Happy riding, stay safe, and take it easy everyone.